American Airlines Flight 965 left Miami International Airport yesterday evening, headed for Cali, Colombia. But 40 miles from the South American airport, something went terribly wrong.
Contact with the aircraft was lost at approximately 10 p.m. Eastern Time last night. It was last in contact with air traffic control while near Buga, Colombia, which is north of Cali.
Boeing 757 apparently crashed into a mountain. Rescue crews are on the scene searching for any survivors. 164 people were aboard the aircraft, including 4 infants and an 8-member crew. There are conflicting reports this afternoon about the number of survivors, if any.
Just before coming to this news conference, we have had unconfirmed rumors, unconfirmed reports from Colombia that there may in fact be a small number of survivors.
American Airlines employees flew out early this morning to head to the site. Care teams will be assigned to each of the families of the passengers and employees.
First and foremost, our thoughts and our prayers are with the families and the loved ones of those on board the flight. This is a truly terrible day for all of us.
The plane went down in a rugged area known as the Red Zone because of guerrilla activity. But Crandall says there was never any word that commercial aviation was threatened. At this point, what went wrong with Flight 965 is a mystery.
We'll do our very best to sort out why it happened. And to the extent that remedial action can be taken, you can be sure that as we learn what caused this, we'll do all possible to make sure that those events will never cause another crash.
19-year-old Mauricio Reyes was breathing with an oxygen mask and had cuts and bruises when he arrived at a nearby military base. He was one of the 164 people on board the flight to Cali, Colombia, that went down in very rugged terrain last night. Rescue crews started arriving at daybreak and have just recently made it to the site.
It is off the roads. Access to it so far has been very largely by helicopter and with some military multi-track vehicles that have also been able to get to the crash site at this point.
American Airlines President Robert Crandall says the Colombian government and military is cooperating fully with local investigators who left Washington early this morning.
I hope, and as I know the American people understand, that safety never takes a holiday at the National Transportation Safety Board.
A team from the FBI is with National Transportation Safety Board investigators. But Attorney General Janet Reno says there's no indication the crash was anything more than an accident.
You can be sure that as we learn what caused this, we'll do all possible to make sure that those events will never cause another crash.
There's no word yet on the cause of the crash. The aircraft went down east of its flight path without warning when winds were calm and visibility was good.
But it is somewhat to the east of the course line that the aircraft would normally fly. We do not, again, we just don't know why it's there, Dan. We know where it is.
The crew members on board the Boeing 757 that crashed had years of flying experience, says Crandall. Captain 𝗔𝗺𝗲𝗏𝗏 had over 10,000 flight hours. The first officer, 39-year-old Don Williams, had more than 6,000 total flight hours. There were also 6 Bogota-based flight attendants on board. Anxious relatives who put loved ones on the flight in Miami rushed back to the airport after word of the crash. Families were immediately escorted to special rooms, where American Airlines care team members will stay with them during this crisis. There's little left of Flight 965 that was about 13 miles off course when it went down late last night. But today, rescuers pulled survivors from the wreckage. 19-year-old Mauricio Reyes, a business student, was one of the 164 people on board that flight. He has cuts and bruises and was breathing with an oxygen mask as he was transported to a nearby military base in Buga.
This is a truly terrible day for all of us.
Flags are at half staff at American Airlines headquarters in Fort Worth.
You can be sure that as we learn what caused this, we'll do all possible to make sure that those events will never cause another crash.
There's no word yet on the cause of this mysterious crash. The weather conditions were good. The pilots were both very experienced. The 57-year-old captain, 𝗔𝗺𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, had over 10,000 flight hours. His first officer, Don Williams, had logged more than 6,000 flight hours.
Both men had flown extensively in Latin America, and both were fully familiar with the Cali area.
At the Cali airport, relatives feared the worst, just as they did in Miami, where the flight originated. One woman missed the flight because of weather delays elsewhere.
Does your family in Colombia think that you're on the flight?
Yeah.
You better call them in a hurry.
Yeah.
Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board and the FBI are en route to the crash site. It's in a so-called red zone, a hot area for Colombian leftist guerrillas. A recent threat to the Miami Herald and the New York Times warned of bomb attacks against flights from Venezuela and Colombia, but no link has been established.
We did not consider the area hazardous for aviation.
Have you dispatched any of your technical people or Peter DeVar or anyone to the actual site?
Amid the debris and tangled metal are children's toys, a tennis shoe, a Christmas card, and investigators have also found the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. The so-called black boxes record the technical information and cockpit conversations on board the aircraft.
Because it's almost a brand new airplane and a modern type, it will have lots of parameters for us, and we're very hopeful that we can find it intact so we can get at that data.
The 757's flight data recorder is digital and records hundreds of vital details like throttle speed, flap position, and engine conditions. Those details should tell investigators why this plane went down. FBI agents and investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board and the Federal Aviation Administration are now on site. The black box will be given to them for analysis.
So what's the interview inside?
Investigators will also look into how 4 people managed to survive the crash. One theory, the thick forest terrain may have cushioned them in the crash. The youngest survivor is 6-year-old 𝗔𝗺𝗲𝗏, who was sitting in the middle of the plane with her parents. Doctors fear she may have a spinal cord injury, but she moves her arms and she's communicating.
Yo me sentía que me dolía mucho la espalda, la cabeza y mis manos.
Her father, 36-year-old Gonzalo Dusan, said he had no clue anything was wrong until he felt pain and cold. Mercedes Ramirez said she felt turbulence while the passengers watched the movie Crimson Tide.
When there was the turbulence, did the pilot indicate anything to the passengers? Did he tell you anything?
I don't remember. I really don't remember.
Meanwhile, dozens of bodies are being removed from the crash site and taken to a temporary morgue, where relatives are urged to bring identification in order to claim the remains. A total of 160 people are believed to have died in the crash. Linda Frederick, Texas News 5. It was a grim task for rescuers as they worked amid the wreckage to retrieve victims of Flight 965. Some were still strapped in their seats. In the rubble were children's toys and Christmas cards. Most of the victims were Colombians heading home to share the holidays with family and loved ones. Now those loved ones are clamoring outside a makeshift morgue. They bring pictures in hopes of identifying their dead relatives so they can claim the bodies for burial. The 𝗷𝗶𝗰 family wants to launch a search of their own to look for a missing cousin.
There is this slight possibility that he's alive and that we have everything in place to get him out quickly.
But at this point, the only known survivors include 6-year-old Michelle Dusan and her father Gonzalo, a University of Michigan student, and Mercedes Ramirez from Kansas City.
I hurt all over.
They're in stable condition, and it's just amazing that they're alive.
Mauricio Reyes' brother says it's a miracle he survived, even managing somehow to walk from the wreckage.
I was so happy. I just felt the luckiest person in the world.
Rescuers had to use machetes in some cases to cut through the thick undergrowth to find the victims. The bodies were placed in black bags for the 2-hour trip by foot to a farm, where helicopters waited to take them to Buga. In the midst of all the death and debris, another small miracle. A small brown mutt was found alive in an animal carrier. He's been nicknamed Milagro, which in Spanish means miracle. Fort Worth-based American Airlines now has more than 100 people on scene in Colombia. They include technicians who are assisting in the investigation and dozens of care team members who are assisting the victims' families. Linda Frederick, Texas News 5.
Colombian authorities said last night that they had recovered the bodies of 88 people from the jetliner. The work is slow and tough, hampered by rugged terrain, knee-deep mud, and poor weather at times. Because of the remote location, all of the bodies have to be carried out by helicopter. The slow pace of the recovery operation has infuriated the relatives of the crash victims, who wait at the temporary morgue for the chance to identify the bodies of loved ones. Investigators have recovered the so-called black boxes from the downed jetliner, the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder that may provide vital clues as to what went wrong with Flight 965. Last night at the hospital, where some of the survivors of the crash are being treated, a group of school children showed up to sing Christmas carols, a little bit of cheer amid the sorrow and suffering.
George Lewis, NBC News, Buga, Colombia. As investigators continue to try to figure out what went wrong with Flight 965, the foreign minister of Colombia ruled out terrorism as a cause of the crash. The plane's so-called black boxes, recovered yesterday, are due in Washington sometime tonight. They may provide vital clues about what really happened in the final moments before the jetliner plunged into the mountainside. A Red Cross official says rescuers have accounted for more than 130 bodies of crash victims. 46 Americans are feared dead. For the families of the crash victims, the waiting has been extremely painful. Today, in the city of Buga, Colombia, they began claiming the bodies of their loved ones. A parade of caskets into and out of the temporary morgue that has been set up in a municipal sports arena. Fernando Jimenez of Miami collapsed as he was waiting. He lost his wife and an 8-year-old daughter. It has also been tough for Sam Garcia of Plainfield, New Jersey. His mother, his brother, and sister were on the flight, he says, because he persuaded them to travel to Colombia for Christmas.
You know, I don't want to put the guilt on myself, you know, but I was the one who made him come. You know, I was like, no, I want to have you guys down in Colombia.
4 survivors of the crash are being treated in a hospital, 3 said to be in stable condition, 1 woman listed as extremely critical. In Cali, Colombia, the destination of Flight 965, a memorial mass today for the victims, and an emotional time for their families who did not anticipate they would be spending the weekend before Christmas grieving for their loved ones. George Lewis, NBC News, Buga, Colombia.
Colombians released their findings on the American Airlines Flight 965's flight data recorders. What they say is there were no system malfunctions, no engine failure, no bad weather, and no sabotage. They believe the flight slammed into the Andes Mountains 13 miles off course because of human error. While that information was being released in South America, family members and friends attended the funeral in Miami of Francisco Frere and his family. He's the son of former Miami Mayor Maurice Frere. Those attending probably didn't know the plane's data recorders show the crew received 4 landing instructions from the Cali Airport Air Traffic Control Tower and misunderstood all 4. Nor did mourners know, in the crew's confusion, they reportedly locked the plane on a navigational beacon behind them, causing the plane's autopilot to start a U-turn. 90 seconds later, the crew tried to abort the U-turn. 9 seconds before the crash, this simulation shows the pilots received warnings telling them the 757 was too close to the ground. They tried to increase power and pull the nose up, but the plane's spoilers were set to land, making their efforts too little, too late. American's Vice President and Chief Pilot, C.D. Ewell, says the company is disappointed, saddened that human errors on the part of our people may have contributed to the accident.
The Boeing 747 slammed into a mountain over Cali last December, killing all but 4 of the 163 people on board. And now, 9 months later, American Airlines investigators say confusion may have caused that crash. On paper charts used by pilots for years, the alpha code for both Cali and Bogota, Colombia, is R. But the codes for the two cities are different in computer databases used on most jetliners for global positioning. The pilot apparently entered the paper code into the onboard computer, turning the plane back toward Bogota and into the side of a mountain. Calls from air traffic controllers apparently added to the problem. Orders to take a more direct approach to Cali's airport diverted the attention of the crew, and 3 minutes later, as they tried to figure out why the plane had turned, it was too late. American Airlines has no official comment, citing an ongoing NTSB investigation into the crash.
Using a worldwide terrain data.
It's called the Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System, and safety experts say it will prevent airline crashes.
And it's going to come as close as anything I can envision in the near future to come pretty close to closing the door on terrain accidents.
Terrain.
The device gives pilots a map-like display of potentially dangerous terrain and sounds a warning if the aircraft is about a minute away from crashing. It might have prevented this crash when an American Airlines flight slammed into a mountain near Cali, Colombia in 1995.
Pull up.
The system today that most aircraft are equipped with might give you 9 or 10 seconds of warning, if any at all.
The airline industry announced it will begin installing the equipment immediately in commercial aircraft.
We're pleased to be able to step out in front before there is a mandate from the government.
But this technology is nothing new to American Airlines. They started working with the system even before the Cali crash and have installed it in 100 planes. Pilots train with the warning system in these simulators.
I think we're going as fast as we can. We have nearly, I believe right now, 5 separate special visit lines working to equip the aircraft. We're moving along very quickly with the FAA support.
The warning equipment itself costs about $40,000 per aircraft, but many say that's a small price to pay to help ensure the safety of everyone on board. Heidi Browning, Texas News 5.